I am Irmak Sirar. I am a partner and data scientist at Datascope. Datascope is a data science firm based in Chicago. And I am also instructing right now at the Metis Data Science Bootcamp. We basically, as Datascope, partnered with Metis to create the Data Science Bootcamp. And I was really excited about this because I really like teaching as well. But I was also really excited because it gave us the opportunity to work together with Lori Skelly, which is the co-designer of the course, and everybody else at Datascope, to build a course that's based completely on projects. The reason is really after trying to learn data science, playing with it, working as a data scientist, I have come to appreciate that the thing that's going to teach you data science the most, the fastest, is to go through an entire project. So we made these 5 projects. We gave them cool code names, as we do with actual projects, right? And our students go through each of them. Right now, they're in their last project. Our first cohort is ending. It's Project Kojak, and it's their passion project, which is the one that I am most excited about. Because a passion project is basically where you pick something that you're really passionate about, which will be movies for me, and you try to answer questions that you're really curious about using data science. And it's this really exhilarating and really this process that teaches you a lot, which I have gone through again and again. And here today, I will be basically taking you along with me on the journey I had on my biggest passion project, the one that I love the most. And with me, you should be able to get the skills that I gathered and the things that I learned, hopefully. So, as Tarlin mentioned, I am obsessed with movies, so naturally any passion project, most of the passion projects that I deal with are going to be about movies. And this was basically the main question that I had in my mind for years and years. Is my reaction to a movie, this could also be a book or a song, but I just care about movies more. Is that predictable? Can you actually tell me before I watch the movie what my reaction is going to be? Or can you just say something and it might be maybe close, but like, to which degree can you do that? And to answer that, that journey starts when I was 7, because that's when I first saw Star Wars. I was 7, and I thought, well, it's pretty cool. It's a decent movie, you know. There's space and stuff. If I had to give it like stars out of 5 stars, I would have given it 3 stars maybe. Then I turned 14, and I watched the original trilogy again. And oh my God, it was the best thing ever on this earth. I completely loved it. I was like, what is going on? How did I not realize that this is obviously 5 stars out of 5, but the best thing ever? That is also when I fell in love with Princess Leia and never stopped. 3 years later, this came around. I will not say anything on this slide. Then, over the years, as years passed, I kept watching Star Wars again and again and again and again and again. And I started realizing that, well, you know, when you think about it, it's not really a masterpiece. It's not like, oh my God, the best thing in the world. It's not that good. But it's still pretty amazing. And I'm still in love with Leia, right? Okay. So now, keep all of this in mind. I want to go back to the question of, is my reaction to a movie or a book or a song predictable? Because, look, even with this like one trilogy, my entire reaction has changed so much over the years. How can I even answer that? And to start with, what determines how much I like a movie? How can I quantify that, right? So to start maybe perhaps answering that, I went to Netflix. This is how Netflix looked like back when I started. They were still showing the predicted stars for how much you will like a movie. right? And that excited me. Okay, how are they doing this? Is it going to be accurate? How is it going to happen? So we are now in sci-fi action adventure section of Netflix. You can see that Star Wars, I've rated 4 stars. And now let's say I want to know the Book of Eli. It says 2.5 stars. You will like this 2.5 stars much. Okay, I haven't heard about this movie. Will I actually like it? How much will I like it? How do you come up with this 2.5 stars? So in 2006, Netflix was using this algorithm called Cinematch. They had a lot of data. They had 1 billion user ratings and 55,000 movies. So they definitely had a lot of data to ask these questions to. So how does Cinematch work? Imagine that I have a soulmate in taste. Let's call him Fermac, okay? And Fermac and I have watched the exact same movies. We have given the exact same ratings, because like our taste is exactly the same. Like we've liked everything exactly the same amount, right? Except the Book of Eli. I haven't seen the Book of Eli, but Fermac watched it, okay? And he thought it was fantastic. It was 5 stars for Fermac. So if indeed this soulmate existed, then I could take these 5 stars and it would be probably a pretty good prediction of how much I will like the movie, right? Because we've basically liked the exact same things. Unfortunately, in real life, there are no perfect soulmates like this. But don't worry, because there are almost soulmates. So these people and I share a lot of similar tastes. We are very, very similar people. I like all of them a lot. And let's say all of them have also watched Book of Eli. So I can basically maybe start getting an idea of like how much I will like it based on their opinion. So first, I can calculate how much of a soulmate I am with these people, like 87%, 74%. And by soulmate here, of course, I mean how much our tastes have aligned in the past, right? Then I will look at how they rated the movie Book of Eli. And I'll just take a weighted average of like how much we are similar times what their rating was, right? Take that weighted average, and that should still be a pretty good prediction. Okay, that was basically the idea behind Cinematch. And it really works well for movies that everybody rates, because you can take a weighted average among a lot of things, and it sort of cancels out all the noises, all the unexpected stuff. So if you're trying to guess how much you like Avatar, this is actually doing a pretty good job. With movies that are really not watched by a lot of people, it's doing really, really badly. Like it is basically just, it doesn't know. It's just like giving you something that has nothing to do with how much you like it. Okay, so there are also some movies, these low-hate type of movies, which are not distributed like, oh, everybody likes it around 3 stars plus minus 1. But they are more like, you either really love it or you really, really hate it, which also really throws off these sort of algorithms. In fact, these type of like popular but really weird, these like binary, these dividing movies, were the biggest error source for Netflix. In fact, 15% of all errors came from one single movie for Netflix, and it was this. Now you start having an idea of what I'm talking about with these, divisive, weird movies. Okay, so let's see how well it is doing. To be able to compare how well an algorithm like this does, well, we have to start somewhere, and we should start with the easiest thing that you can do. Instead of doing anything fancy, what would be my best prediction? Well, let me just look at what everyone has rated. Forget about the soulmates thing. Forget about any algorithm. Just I will take the average of what everybody has rated. Okay, that's basically the trivial, simplest model that we can have. And the root mean square error is 1.05 stars. If you don't know what root mean square error is, don't worry about it. You can basically think of this as, well, it's guessing within plus minus 1 star. Okay. So this might not sound very impressive, because like if it's guessing 3, that means it's guessing more like 2 to 4 which is like more than the half of your entire range from 1 to 5. But OK, that's what it was doing when you just take the mean score of everyone. Now, how does Cinematch do? Well, it does better. It's 0.95 stars. And you may think that, well, it's still pretty much plus minus 1 star. That didn't really change anything. Actually, this is like almost a 10% increase. And even though it's still kind of not very sure about how many exact stars you're going to give it, it's really important for ranking them. Because what Netflix does, of course, with this is it will basically try to figure out the movies that you're going to really love and recommend them to you, right? So even slight improvements here can change the rankings by a lot. And in fact, this one team reported that an 8.6% increase in your accuracy actually meant like a 1,200% increase in the people that actually went and watched the top recommendation. They thought they were, oh, this is cool, I want to watch this. So it's actually a pretty big impact. Now, this is Cinematch. Netflix in 2006 basically announced, we are going to give a team $1 million if you can do what we did with Cinematch to Cinematch. So we brought it down 10%. You should also bring it down 10% more, which actually gets like harder and harder as you get better and better, of course. So if anybody can achieve this from 0.95 to 0.85, you get $1 million. Of course, everybody got super excited. And in 2009, they got paid. Basically, 3 big teams got together, brought their algorithms together, got the $1 million with a 10% improvement. And they were really, really happy about it. So how did they do it? This is a slide from their long presentation. And do not worry, I am not going to go into any of this. I just wanted to tell you, well, they basically did a whole bunch of really complicated math stuff. But I will talk about the main insights that they learned while doing all of this. So before, in the days of Cinematch, we had pretty solid, very sensible assumptions, right? So those assumptions are, well, you have a certain taste. And how much you will like Book of Eli is basically determined by that taste. I mean, that taste is probably coming from your all the movies you've seen, your entire life experience, etc. But it is dictating how much you will like it. You just don't know that rating yet because you haven't seen it. When you actually watch it, that rating will be revealed to you, right? Because you've experienced it. So, and that sounds like very, very sensible to me. That makes complete sense. And it's also completely wrong. Those are not true. First of all, your rating changes with time. And when I say your rating changes with time, I don't mean like with Star Wars. When I was 7, it was 3 stars. When I was 30, it was 4 stars. I mean like from day to day. I mean like Tuesday and Thursday. Okay? In fact, it depends on how many other movies you've rated that day, your average rating for the day. This is probably depending on maybe if you're in a good mood, you're rating everything 5 stars, I don't know. Which movies you rated on that day, and also in a feedback loop, whatever Netflix shows you as the prediction. Like if it tells you 4 stars, you might have a reaction like, maybe you would have liked it for 2 stars, but now it's 4. Or maybe you see 4 and you're like, you have high expectations and now you rate it 1 star. But all of these things, which are not part of this general long-standing taste, they have an effect. Okay, so actually if you build a model completely separate from taste and only based on these rating tendencies, like how many movies you rated that day, what was your average rating that day, etc., without actually looking at what you've rated in the past, this is actually a better model than Cinematch. This is actually a 12% increase from the trivial model without looking at which movies you like. I'm only looking at your average rating for however many movies you've rated that stuff. So basically the non-taste component has a bigger effect than the actual taste component. Okay, so what does this suggest? It suggests several things. When we see a movie, we basically cannot compare it with everything else I've seen in memory. So I am just remembering like a limited set, and I'm just comparing it to that limited set, and my rating depends on what that limited set ends up being. So liking depends on time and mood. These are environmental factors besides your taste. And other people's opinions affect our own. You can think of it as some people are followers who, when a lot of other people say, oh, I love this movie, they tend to like it more. Some people are hipsters and they're like, oh, everybody likes that movie, I hate that. And I know exactly what some of you are thinking right now. You are thinking, that's not me. Yeah, people are stupid, they get like affected by others, but not me. I actually have my own opinions. And for you, I want to talk about an experiment that Duncan Watts did. Duncan Watts made this website called Music Lab, and it's a website for downloading music, basically. It looks like this, and you can basically just click on it and download, and it shows you the number of downloads, etc. Now, what they did was they created these alternative worlds. So maybe you and I are going to the same site, but I am seeing one version and you are seeing one version, okay? And in one alternative, other people's ratings were completely invisible. So this ended up with the songs having more or less equal ratings in the end. So everybody kind of downloaded every song pretty much the same amount. Everybody liked the same song about the same amount. In alternative B, you could actually see all of the ratings that other people had. You could see which songs are already popular, which songs are not. And this actually ended up in several songs snowballing in popularity. So there were actually some hits that were much more popular than the other ones, okay? And again here, you might start thinking, well, okay, but nobody's going to listen to all of the songs. Maybe when I see what is already popular, I get to listen to the songs that I was going to like a lot anyway. And maybe that's how I figured that. Wrong, because for each trial, it was different songs that ended up being hits, right? So basically, that means even though the song's quality, of course, has an effect, actually what you see is popular also has a big, big effect. So no matter what you think, for most of us, social influence plays a really, really big part in determining what is going to be a hit and what is going to be a miss. Okay, so now that I convinced you completely about this, let's move on. And let's think about how much we like things. The degree of liking, the amount to which I like something, is sensitive and vague. What do I mean by these? By sensitive, I mean these things. I mean things other than taste have an effect, other people's opinions, like my current mood, what I've been doing this week, all of this has an effect. So on different times, on different moods, I will have different ratings. So environmental factors besides our taste. When I say it is vague, I mean I am not getting an idea of where this movie stands exactly among all of the movies I've seen in my entire life, okay? I mean that it is very difficult to describe accurately and consistently with a number, with a single number. Okay, so basically, we are talking about a passion project here. This is like when I started thinking about this, when I started reading about it, I started realizing, well, wait a minute, stop even predicting. Put that aside, can I even reliably rate and rank the movies that I've seen in terms of enjoyment? Can I even answer the question about like what movie is your favorite, right? This sounds like a very, very simple question, what are your top 20 movies? But if any of you have attempted to answer this question, which I'm sure many of you have, it is very difficult to answer. And part of the reason is because degree of liking is sensitive and vague. Okay, so can we do something about this? Okay, are we just going to say, oh, well, it's really hard to rate things. It's really hard to figure out your top 20. And do we just stop there? Well, before we stop and give up, let's try to understand why the degree of liking is vague. Okay? So enjoyment from a movie is a very, very high dimensional information, right? It's not just I enjoyed it 5 units, but some movies actually have these things about, I don't know, this satisfies me intellectually. This is a great comedy, it makes me laugh a lot. I really like this coming-of-age movie. I really like these romance movies. All of them are providing different reactions in me that are not on the same scale. They're all different dimensions. And I am trying to project this onto a single dimension of just 1 to 5 stars. So when you're actually thinking about movies that create completely different reactions in you, it is very difficult to say, oh, this was 4.3 and this was 4.5. But of course, sometimes you just want to do the best projection you can. I still want to be able to say, yeah, this is not perfect. This is high-dimensional information projected onto a single line, but here's my top 20. OK. So let's go back and go into a little bit more detail about what I mean by us comparing the movie to a limited set. Let's say I'm trying to rate Star Wars, right? And let's say these are all the movies that I've seen, and let's say I've ranked them based on how much I like it. So the Epic movie is terrible, and Citizen Kane is awesome, okay? So what happens is I am trying to think of all the movies that I've seen, and I'm trying to map my enjoyment to a specific scale. So I'm going to say, like, Epic movie is 1 star, and then Citizen Kane is 5 stars. So I am going to make this my line, make this my one-dimensional like rating scale, and I will choose the corresponding rating based on this scale, right? Easy. The problem is I can't remember this entire thing. I can't remember all the movies. I only remember fuzzily just a small subset of it. So I am trying to map the scale of what 4 stars mean, what 1 star means. So what ends up happening is the best movie that I can remember right now becomes 5 stars. The worst movie I can remember right now becomes 1 star. And I am basically sampling out of my movie set. Unfortunately, this is biased sampling. It is not completely random sampling, because on a Tuesday, I might choose these movies, and this is my scale. But on a Friday, I might remember these movies just because I've seen things that reminded me of those movies or something like that. And now my scale is actually harsher. Now a pretty good movie is kind of like on the lower end, right? So that's bad. That's kind of the reason why degree of liking is vague. So what can we do about this? We can certainly handle single comparisons, because I don't need to remember all the movies that I've seen, right? I can just say, did I like Star Wars more or Titanic more? Still, sometimes complicated question, lots of dimensions to consider, but I could at least answer this. So I can say I like Star Wars better than Titanic. This is a less vague problem, but at the same time, it is also very little information. When I give Star Wars, let's say 3 stars, that is putting it like into a ranking among everything. Whereas here, I only know the relation of 2 movies. So I could actually manually compare Star Wars with every movie that I've seen if I made a list and went through the list and said, yeah, liked it better, 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 worse. Then I can figure out exactly where into this list it fits. I can say, oh, it's right after Indiana Jones, but right before Princess Bride, right? So if I want the full ranking, what I have to do is I need to go through every single pair and compare all of them so that I know exactly where every movie ends up, right? I don't need to rely on my memory. I'm going through this list that I curated. Of course, that means if I've seen 1,000 movies, that means 1,000,000 comparisons, or 500,000. I don't think that's very feasible, right? Keone doesn't like that very much either. So let's think about this a little bit. We don't really need all of them. if I know that I like Star Wars better than Raiders of the Ark, and I like Raiders of the Ark much better than Troll 2, this probably tells me something about how I feel on Star Wars and Troll 2, right? It does not necessarily say that, well, then obviously I like Star Wars better than Troll 2, because this is high-dimensional information. There can be some cyclicities. Maybe for some movies, actually the right one wins still. But it's less likely, right? I know it's less likely. So perhaps I can actually use this information. Maybe instead of comparing everything, I just compare a random sample of those 1 million pairs and actually use a ranking algorithm that utilizes all of that hidden information from other choices, right? And actually, Mark Zuckerberg thought that was a great idea. And if you've seen Social Network or read about him, you know that he actually tried to do the exact same thing, but not with movies, but with how hot the girls were in campus. So he basically did face match, where he was comparing faces of girls in campus, and you were choosing one by one which one you thought was hotter. And he was using a ranking algorithm to utilize all of this information and rank them without having to compare every girl to every girl, okay? So what he was using, and what his friend was writing on the window there, is called the ELO rating system. It was developed for chess, basically not for comparing how hot a person is. It was for understanding the skills of chess players. But I will demonstrate it again with hotness, but unlike Zuckerberg, I'm going to focus on how hot some male actors in Hollywood are. For example, let's say Channing Tatum and Jude Law, both quite hot. Let's say the hotness on a scale of 1 to 10 of Channing Tatum, let's say it's 7. Well, actually, I might think that it's 7, but you might think that it's like 7.5. Somebody else might think it's 7.3, right? So let's give him more or less of a hotness range, depending on how different people might think about him. So what we're saying is, well, a lot of people might think he is 7.2. Some people might think he is 8.5, but pretty much almost nobody thinks that he is 1. Okay. And let's give a range to Jude Law too. You might completely disagree with me here, but I think he's really cute, so I'm gonna put him on 8. And when a person actually compares them, let's say he sees them on a website and tries to think, which one do I think is hotter? Well, from this range, basically this person stands on 7.12 for Channing Tatum, and for Jude Law, his kind of taste, his appreciation says it's more like 7.68, let's say. So we compare those numbers. So if that number is higher, then Jude Law will be selected for this person as the hotter option. What I'm describing here underneath with those numbers is you are not thinking of those numbers. You are just saying Jude Law is clearly hotter. But that's what I'm saying is going on in your mind without you realizing. Okay. So we can actually, based on these ranges, we see how much of it overlaps, etc. We can actually say, well, if we know this range exactly, I can tell you that 64% of the comparisons, when people compare it, Jude Law will win, and 36% Channing Tatum will win. This means we can still rank them, but basically this model allows us to say, well, even though generally we rank Jude Law higher, for some people Channing Tatum will be hotter. We keep that in the model. Okay. All right, so that's how the ranges work, but like, how are we going to figure out what those ranges are? So let's start with the same guess for every contender. Let's start with 5 for all of them, and start comparing them one by one. If Clooney wins here, which he clearly will, I hope, then we update the best guesses accordingly. Now he is 5.12, and Robert Pattinson is 4.88, and on a long road down, hopefully again. Then we compare George Clooney with John Hamm. I really like Clooney too, so 5.24. But of course, nobody's Keanu Reeves. So unfortunately, he loses this time. But I want to show you that even though he lost this one, our current approximation of his range is still higher than Keanu, because we've only had one comparison with Keanu. But with George Clooney, we have more to go. So as we keep comparing, we are basically going to get a good idea of where they are. And we will not need all of the comparisons, because Keanu went straight up to 5.10 for beating a really strong contestant like George Clooney. So because I knew that George Clooney had beaten a lot of other opponents and Keanu has beaten him, now without having to compare Keanu to everybody, I still get a pretty good idea of where he is in terms of hotness. Okay, so one thing about this is if I know that Channing Tatum already has 69% chance to win, when he eventually wins, I don't really update my numbers very much, because this was the expected outcome. I didn't learn anything new. Yeah, I already knew that he was way hotter because my ranges reflected that, so the updates are small. But if perchance this is won by Robert Pattinson, this was a very unexpected win. So this tells me, oh, there must have been something really wrong in my ranges, so I need to update them a lot, right? So that way, I extract different amounts of information from each result of comparison. Okay. Now we basically end up with scores on a single scale, and these are estimates of people's appreciation levels. And basically, Keanu wins. I now know who I think is hottest in Hollywood. Okay. So Keanu gets really excited about this, of course, and then he wants to apply this to movies, because I want to know my top 20. Let's do the same thing with movies instead of hotness. But actually, Keanu, we can do even better. We can use something called Bayesian ranking algorithms. This was also developed for chess first, with an algorithm called Glicko. They called it the ELO killer. And later, for team games like Halo, it was developed as TrueSkill by Microsoft. And it's a pretty good ranking algorithm for matchmaking in online games, if you're into that. Okay, so the idea is I'm going to compare just some of them, right? So let's think about this Bayesian ranking. Again, just like the hotness, I have a range of taste. Now we are back from a lot of people thinking about how hot the actors are. We are at what is your best guess for how much I like this movie, okay? So this range now of maybe plus minus half star is not coming from the idea that different people might have different opinions. It is now coming from the idea that degree of liking is sensitive. Because on a Tuesday, I might like Star Wars this much, and on a Thursday, I might maybe like it this much. But it's still a range. I'm never going to jump from 1 star to 5 stars within a week. Okay, so we have these ranges. Let's figure this out. We have the same idea of like, well, there's 82% for Star Wars to win, 15% for Lord of the Rings to win. So, and we also put in maybe they can draw as well. So we are trying to figure out what that range should be. One main difference is instead of one single best guess, I am going to come up with an entire distribution. I'm going to say my best guess is 4.3, but 4.2 is also possible, just less likely. And the width of this distribution is basically my uncertainty. If I've done very few comparisons, there's lots of uncertainty. After I do many comparisons, I am quite sure. This is now 4.3 plus minus only 0.01 star. Okay? Cool. So this is how it looks. Let's say I am pretty sure about where Lord of the Rings is. It's sitting at 4 as my best guess with not a lot of uncertainty. But let's say this is my first comparison for Star Wars, so lots of uncertainty. Star Wars wins. See, let me show you that again. Yeah, Star Wars jumps right above Lord of the Rings. And it also shrunk because I am much less uncertain. I am much more certain about its ranking. Cool. All right. So How are we going to introduce one of the insights from Netflix Rise? Your rating actually changes over time. And now I'm talking more about, well, over a longer range, like when I was 7 and when I was 14 and when I was 30, my tastes had changed. Well, we can increase the uncertainty a little bit before every comparison to say that, well, maybe my tastes have changed a little bit. I am less certain about these things now. All right, so Keanu is really happy. Let's do this on the movies. And let's start comparing them. But we still want to do as few as possible. So what we can do is actually we can use minimum effort for maximum information. And we can actually use a star rating as a starting point. So a star rating by itself is not reliable because of all the reasons I talked in the beginning, but it still carries a lot of information. So here, Vertigo, instead of starting around 3 with an uncertainty of ±2 stars, maybe it can start around 5. Maybe that's my initial. Maybe the star rating is where I start with a lot of uncertainty, but it still carries a lot of information. And the same thing for Batman and Robin. I don't care if any of you like this. That movie is terrible, and it should be rated 1 star, and that's where it should start. OK. So if you don't want to spend too much time on this, we can do even better than that. We can actually calculate for every comparison, what are these probabilities? So if these are the probabilities, I can actually calculate how much information I expect to learn from this outcome. So if Vertigo wins, which it will win like 98% of the time, we didn't learn anything new. And then we learned quite a lot if Batman and Robin wins, but the probability of it winning is so low, so that I actually don't expect to learn much from this. So I can actually calculate the expected amount of information and only ask you the questions that will tell me the most about what you like. Okay? So for example, if you're already really certain about 2 movies, that comparison won't tell you a lot. If you're comparing 2 movies that you are really uncertain about, you will learn a lot. So this is a much better question to ask. So I can choose which questions to ask. All right. Now, basically, when you ask me what are your top 20 movies, I basically can answer you because this was my passion project. And after going through all of this and understanding and learning how to do all of that, I basically built a website as a proof of concept of all this, movie versus movie. And we actually have movie versus movie down at the Metis Bootcamp booth. And you can actually go there and play, or you can log in with your Google account on your phones or something and start comparing them. You can rate movies, that's your starting point. You can compare them one by one, saying, oh, I like this better, I like that better. It's a lot of fun, I guarantee you. And then you can actually look at what your own rankings are. How much do you really like the movies? So this is really neat because it's not just about movies. Quantifying human reactions are really, really hard. This applies to a whole bunch of different problems. And degree of liking is sensitive and vague for a whole bunch of things. And it is also very useful because you can use it for customized websites, sorting search results, for recommendation engines, for a lot of things. So this started as a passion project for me and trying to understand what is my top 20. But it is also very useful, and it taught me a lot of skills that come in really, really handy. So what do? We start with a rating, pose the correct comparisons, every decision gets us closer. This takes care of the vague problem. We do many comparisons for a movie. Some I do on Tuesdays, some I do on Thursdays. So this means my mood and other factors get averaged out. I can't do much about the social influence, but I don't really want to do much. This is just part of naturally how we like things. Social influence is a natural part of how much we enjoy things, and I don't really worry about that. So this also takes care of the sensitive part. And one last lesson that I learned is that, well, I needed to collect a lot of data about my tastes to figure this out. And a really great way of collecting data that you need, either from yourself or from clients or something like that, is to make it really, really fun. All right. And I just want to wrap up with going back to the Data Science Bootcamp and the projects that we have, I mentioned that our students are right now doing their own passion projects. So when we started designing this as a combination of projects, we thought, well, what do we go through in every single project? So thinking of movie versus movie, for example, I can talk about these different parts of the data science project. There's the domain. Here the domain was recommendation systems and movies and books and those type of popular things. There is the design aspect. This is the most important one. Any good data scientist will tell you that the most important part of data science is figuring out the correct questions. And here the design for movie versus movie was that iterative process of, oh, I want to know if you can really predict my reaction. And then it goes on to focusing on different questions. Oh, actually degree of lighting, sensitive and vague. What can we do about this? There is the data. The data here was how much how I rated movies, basically, those comparison results. So I collected my own data here, but I also made it fun, and I used a SQL database. And we had algorithms, the Bayesian ranking algorithms. The tools, I used Python, some TrueSkill package. And the communication was basically that web app that I built, where you could actually see your rankings. This is an example of different parts of a data science project, and we try to go through all of these parts for all of the projects that we talk about. And right now, our students are finishing their passion projects. They are right now at the point when I first started looking at my top 20 on that website with teary eyes and happiness. And I really envy them, and I'm really proud of them at the same time. So yeah, come to our booth, check out movie versus movie, and play around a little bit, maybe figure out your own top 10. And what we're doing is actually we are letting everybody fight together so that we will actually have an idea of like what the collective of Uncubed is thinking are the best movies. So if you're curious about that, I'd say check that out. And I think there's also there's a chance to win an iPad if you go and play, I believe. So that's it. That's my talk about passion projects and data science. And thank you very much.